So have you started recording?
Yes,
Okay, so I'll start. Whilst a city's design seems to demonstrate a clever architectural feat, it's always felt lacking when compared to nature. Morning, everyone. This is your host Prayang. Welcome you all to this morning to a discussion over green spaces shrinking due to rapid urbanization, presented by the VONG SDG Cafe. Hey everyone, ever thought of living in a treehouse, watching the sunset and the sunrise when through the little window of that treehouse? But in today's cities, it might not be a good idea, as you might not find the canopy of trees to build a house, nor a good natural view either. With hope of more green spaces in urban areas and regard, I'd like you all to welcome our guest speaker, an award winning environment and sustainability professional with over 20 years of experience having worked with leading organizations. He's also the recipient of a dozen prestigious awards. Dr. Pranab J. Patar. A very warm welcome, sir. He has led and contributed to over 45 environmental projects at the national and regional level. He is currently the chief executive of Delhi-based environmental and social impact organization, Global Foundation for Advancement of Environment and Human Wellness. As a capacity development specialist, he has trained over 10,000 teachers, students, and NGO professionals. Now we'll tell you about Oran Square. Oran Square is an initiative of Omesha Foundation, an NPO that focuses on nurturing conscious global citizens. We are focused on accelerating adoption of sustainable practices by the planet to try and save it from catastrophic consequences, where it seems headed to with its current growth trajectory. We believe that this is only possible by building an understanding of the issue among the new generation. And bolstering their voices is very critical for achieving this. Oran Square has promoted the VONG movement, the voice of the new generation, which is about bolstering the voice of the new generation to accelerate the adoption of sustainable practices by the global community. The VONG movement helps in building a deeper understanding of global social issues amongst the new generation and enables them to influence the attitudes of the society through this understanding. Under the Sustainable Development Goal 15, Life on Land, we have the topic for today, that is rising, shrinking green spaces due to rapid urbanization. I would request all of you to switch on your cameras as we'll starting with the questions. Morning, sir, once again.
Good morning to all, and I really appreciate your rich introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'd like to extend my heartiest gratitude to Sri Nitin Dhawanji for kindly connecting me to this network of very young, energetic group of people who are committed to bring about positive change and contribute to our SDGs. So thank you once again. And I'm very much looking forward to share my experience and thoughts on this very important aspect, linking SDG 15, which is life on land. Uh, SDGs, as we all understand, are 17 key, very important global targets that the world is now committing to achieve or contribute to, and by 2030. But if we look at each of them carefully, they're not separate entities. They're not isolated entities. They're not working in silos. They're all interconnected. And that takes us to SDG number 17, Partnership for Our Goals. Uh, Technically, all these SDGs are partnered. They are connected to each other. They're dependent on each other. The way we're trying to function, whether in the positive perspective or in a detrimental way, we are end of the day impacting each one of them. So it's very important that what we do, how we function, consume, produce. It has to be done in a more resource prudent way so that we do not end up hurting these goals, hurting the planet again, which is already in crisis, which is already in trouble. So yeah, over to you, Brian, and I look forward to having more discussions on this issue today.
Sure, sir. I agree with the fact that they all are interconnected in the large. So, sir, the first question I have for you is, what are the primary effects of urbanization on the blue and green spaces around us?
See, blue and green spaces are the foundation of our existence, and I keep emphasizing that the biodiversity, the flora, fauna around the natural environment. Uh, we started from there. We evolved from there. We originated from nature, and so that's hence this is the foundation. We are now today living, trying to prosper and grow and do whatever things that we are doing. So obviously, when it is negatively hit by activities like developmental aspirations like urbanizations, obviously we are reducing the base of our foundation. We are trying to reduce the resources that is needed for our survival. Of course, the fundamental aspect of SDG is this sustainable development, which says, we can continue to prosper if everything is done in a proper way, in a balanced way. The idea of a sustainable development is that nature conservation and environmental well-being can coexist with our developmental activities, our pursuit for growth. But when it is taken over, when we tend to lose that balance, it becomes difficult. If we look at the urbanization and the cities where we live and work, and unfortunately, the growth that we have witnessed in last few years, today the global population about 68, about 56% global population is living in the cities or in and around cities. So basically in the urban areas. And the statistics indicate that it's going to go further in about another less than 30 years by 2050. This is almost going to be 70%, 68 to 70%, which is phenomenally high. Whereas urban area as such is not as wider to be able to accommodate these many people or house so many people and provide for them, provide as in food, shelter, and all other requisites that we need. And so as a result, the cities are growing, the urban areas, so-called urbanization is happening at a rate faster than we had probably imagined or the planet had ever witnessed in its history. So when we are expanding, so we, of course, despite the best of the efforts to maintain that balance, maintain that integrity of sustainable development, which says that we should have a balance between your developmental aspirations and the natural environment. Many a times that's not feasible, that's not practically possible, and we time and again we have experienced that, and we have seen how the growth is compromising the nature, compromising the green and blue spaces. Any city we pick up today, just within in India, whether the metropolitans or smaller cities, BTS cities, this competition is obvious, And we see water bodies and green spaces shrinking day by day. Every other city today is struggling to protect its lakes, ponds, and wetlands, and that is a serious concern. India is known for its natural, rich ecological heritage, natural heritage, and has a tradition of nature worshipping. Whereas today, because of our growing needs, survival demands, we have not been able to protect nature, let alone worship it, uh, which is a serious problem. And all the problems, immediate problems that we see today, that could be uh, temperature rise because of a phenomenon called urban heat island effect. Cities are experiencing it more because you have more concretes. It's concrete has taken over the natural spaces, which used to be the cushion, which used to be uh, the the the, uh, the shield that used to protect us from heat or other challenges. So that is now gradually decreasing. So we experience more heat. We have problems of air pollution because the soil is exposed. We have more reports of erosion, more reports of soil degradation, more reports of water getting and water and air getting depleted, the quality of water. Bodies are shrinking. We have experienced extreme acute water crisis everywhere, whether it is your groundwater or surface water. So there, so these effects are evident and it can be witnessed by anyone and everyone. One doesn't need to be a scientist or an environmentalist to understand these problems of urbanization. Even our urban fauna, which earlier, even cities like Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, even Delhi, they used to be known for its bird life, the avifauna. But now cities are experiencing the declining number of avifauna. The bird diversity is declining. They're both in terms of distribution, in terms of diversity of species, in terms of number of individuals. They are declining in many cities, many pockets. That's purely because they no longer have the kind of uh, food, habitat, and shelter the cities used to provide. Now declining. They are now in lookout for similar places, similar safe refuge. They are going out of the cities and maybe in the fringe areas, peri-urban areas, maybe in the rural countrysides where they can find a better place. So these are immediate effects, something that we have experienced and we continue to experience, and the way the trend is changing, it is alarming, and it's something that we should be worried of. Yeah, over to you. I
It's
hope.
very true, sir, and especially the bird area. I am from Delhi, and I have actually seen the bird numbers declining over the years, like from my childhood till now.
Right.
So the next question I have for you, sir, is does this shrinking of green spaces affect us on a local basis, like a very localized, maybe a block in a city? How does a block is affected by the shrinking of the green spaces?
Yeah, that's a very important aspect and something we I've already touched upon, but I'll try to delve further into it. You mentioned about block. It's a very interesting aspect. Suppose your block is right in the center of a forest, sorry, a green space, or adjoining a green belt, or adjoining a water body or a river. And if both of them are shrinking, if for whatever reasons they are disappearing or getting degraded, the forest cover is shrinking. So obviously you're going to experience something very, very immediately and evidently. uh, there's a concept of microclimatic zone. And I'm sure when you are traveling within a city, and there are certain pockets within the city you experience that you are somewhat cooler than the other parts of the city, and vice versa. And there are some other parts which is normally warmer. So that's because of the microclimatic change variation, and that is getting control by the external factors. Maybe could be a water body, could be a green space, or a forest nearby. I'll tell you, give you a small example of Delhi NCR. Noida, South Delhi is relatively cooler than other parts of the city, and also compared to Gurgaon. Many a times you would observe, and Gurgaon also I've noticed that the air quality on a given day is somewhat different or not really good as compared to this part of the city. That is also because uh, thankfully we have greenery in this part of Delhi, South Delhi in particular, because there are institutions, IIT, for example. So these pockets are uh, by nature and by design protecting greeneries, right? And also we have the river Yamuna, which is flowing across between Noida and Delhi, South Delhi. So obviously we have a slight difference, temperature difference, and also the general ambience is slightly different than other parts. Like for example, if you go to the further uh, uh, towards the western side of Delhi, or maybe towards Gurgaon, because Gurgaon is very close to the warmer part of Rajasthan. So that difference is visible, and it can be experienced by anyone. And so coming back to the block, it's the same effect. Now Gurgaon, unfortunately, is to be in the heart of the Aravallis, whereas we all know Aravallis has been shrinking over the period of time. And Aravali also used to act as a natural barrier between Delhi and the warmer part of Rajasthan, because when the heat waves, I mean it kind of it shields Delhi from the heat wave. So, but now as the Aravali is shrinking, Aravali is a part of Aravali is already lost because of various activities. So that barrier is gone forever. So obviously we are exposed. Now we can experience probably more heat in the coming years. I mean, I'm talking about from a very logical perspective, from a local specific example. Yeah.
Okay, so we have talked about all these, but what do you think, like, is the direct impact on ecology from urbanization and population, like population in specific?
Ecology, yes, of course. Ecology, see, ecology is what? Ecology is a combination of both living and non-living elements in nature. And so, like I mentioned, it is also, ecology is also, sorry, ecosystem is also about balance between living and non-living. So the more you try to fiddle with this balance, suppose you increase the non-living ingredient, the dynamics will obviously change. And the vice versa, if you happen to have more living entities, more, so obviously the experience will be felt immediately. So ecosystem function. So there are two elements. There's a very important part. It's called ecosystem functions, and the kind of services that we receive from an ecosystem. It's called ecosystem services. Human beings are dependent on an ecosystem for a wide range of services, whether it is food, air, the ambience, air quality, the rainfall, the carbon cycle, the other aesthetic elements, the source of learning and education, recreation. All these services are being provided by nature, by an ecosystem, free of cost to human beings. So when, because of development activity, because of urbanizations, these balances are getting disrupted. Obviously, these services are also going to vary. I've mentioned about temperature difference. We've talked about air quality. We've also touched upon the issue of acute water crisis. If your the water bodies are getting disappeared, so obviously that's going to be a very, very obvious change. So ecosystem functions are also going to change. And all the living organisms, whether it is flora, fauna, birds, mammals, snakes, reptiles, all sort of things, who used to be living there or dependent on that particular ecosystem will be gone and dead. Or maybe will those who can migrate probably will migrate to a nearby area where they can probably find a better place to live, right? So all these changes will be visible, and something can be immediately experienced.
So, breaking the question a bit more
Right,
further, taking it a bit more further, like, can you tell us about the difference separately, how this imbalance, how the urbanization is affecting life on the three realms of land, water, and air? We
right.
can say.
Okay. Uh, so we'll start with land. So because of deforestation and degradation of forest cover, the green cover, so soils are getting exposed. So yeah, they become more prone to erosion and soil quality erosion. I mean, whether it is the degradation of organic matter, fertility, and all that, and it's completely exposed. So when the moment it is exposed, it's no longer able to absorb the heat, or you protect the nature. And also it is causing issues like as mentioned, the fertility is gone. So when the fertility, soil fertility is gone, it's going to have long-term repercussions. You will no longer be able to grow anything there, let alone agriculture. But then anything, if there's the soil is completely exposed, it became, oh sorry, it can more exposure to heat, and without any cover, natural cover like trees or grass or shrubs or whatever. Uh, so it can become like a completely sandy kind of situation. You can compare to an extreme desert-like condition. So that is one. The other thing that you mentioned, the water. The water quality we have been experiencing. India, unfortunately, despite having being one of the uh, rich countries in terms of number of water bodies has been a home to a large number of rivers and smaller water bodies, ponds, lakes, and other aquatic ecosystems, but they are declining. They're declining really fast. And something that we are experiencing when in Delhi alone. Again, I'm coming back to the example, Yamuna is polluted. So obviously, the water quality is also obviously the water quality is not good. The quantity of water quality has also gone down because of various issues, because of demand for human usage. So it is being extracted. Uh, then the direct fauna flora dependent on the river ecosystem is all also dying because the water is polluted. And then as the river flows through, it is impacting the the entire catchment area, the entire both the banks. Uh, and it can have long-term repercussions if it continues to be polluted, if not much being done to prevent the pollution and control the contamination and treat the water. It can have long-term implications, as in it can further uh, contaminate the other source of water, including groundwater sources. So these are some of the very common issues of urbanization and the activities that are taking place in the cities. And we mentioned about air pollution. Air pollution is obviously very evident in, again, coming well to Delhi, has been in the news for all the wrong reasons as far as air quality is concerned, whether it is stubble burning or vehicular pollution. The water quality is getting depleted. We also have a dependency for local electricity generation on fossil fuel. So thankfully, because of the court's intervention now, of course, diesel run generators, fossil fuel run generators are being uh, prohibited in Delhi NCR region. Uh, so all these factors are I said, you know, results of urbanization, because when the city is growing, when our demands and needs are getting more modern, so obviously we have uh, our requirements are also getting diversified, diversified as in we are more dependent on electricity. And one might say, I can give you an example of AC. One might say AC can be an option, but in a city where the temperature is touching 49 degrees Celsius, can it be an option? Probably not for many, but for those who can afford, it's not an option anymore. For them, it is an essential element. Of course, those who cannot afford, but they also probably would love to have it had there been been a capacity for them to afford or buy or procure uh, an air conditioning device. But if we go back a little, is it not that because of our urbanization and other development activities, the city temperature is also growing, right? So that could be a reason for impact of urban heat island effect, and also could be, like I mentioned, it could be an immediate effect because of a wrong microclimatic impact, right? Because microclimate is no longer favorable because of lack of green cover as well as the blue spaces, the water body. So the temperature is going up. So since temperature is going up, so we are becoming more dependent on these devices, air conditioners and all that. So it's in a vicious cycle, right? So we'll have to probably start looking at the root cause. We can go on talk about the impacts on land, water, and air, and these are three important, in fact, one of the most essential elements for our survival. Uh, but what we are looking at, we are experiencing, these are symptoms of a larger problem that's happening elsewhere. So instead of looking at the symptomatic relief, like when we experience fever and the temperature, our body temperature go up, so we tend to pop pills like paracetamol or crocin or so on and so forth. But that's but the fever persists. We say, oh, there could be something wrong in your system, there could be some infection, we should go and see a doctor. So the reason we go and see a doctor, because we want to diagnose the root cause. So here also we'll have to start looking at the root cause and try looking for solutions accordingly. Because the way things are, these elements, the activities will continue to disrupt air quality and water quality as well as soil. So they will continue to pollute these elements of nature, which is essential for our survival as well as the survival of the ecosystem. Yeah.
Hmm. Like we have talked about the various causes, but what is it in our lifestyle? Like as an urban person, what do I have different in lifestyle that is causing these issues? What is
Yes,
adding?
that's very important. In fact, many a times we get engrossed, busy looking at issues, probably bigger issues, and tend to forget and realize that, probably I could be a contributor. I could also be a part of the problem. I could also be one of the culprits. There's something we don't realize, and as a result of that, we also don't realize that probably I can also contribute to providing a solution. I can also be a part of getting it fixed. So, and that's very important, because we should never forget, we can both be a problem. We can both at the same time, we can also be a solution. Individual, one single individual and my action matters both ways, the negative way as well as the positive way. And creating a perception, creating a solution, creating and getting things done. I really appreciate what the VONG stands for. It's a voice for young people who are committed to make a difference, individually as a collectively. Uh, and for almost all the societal issues and environmental challenges, the root cause is the women's. At the end of the day, because everything that is we are experiencing today is a result of something that we should not have done, must not have done. We probably should have done it differently. And probably there are two reasons for doing that. Of course, one is lack of awareness. The other thing is probably we didn't know better, right? The other things is the third one is, of course, it could be completely intentional, deliberate. So that's, of course, that's a crime. So coming to individual lifestyles, one can be, well, there are a lot of visible long-term changes we can bring in without compromising my comfort, because end of the day, as human beings, we are always concerned about my own comfort, convenience, safety, and so forth. So without compromising all of that or causing my own inconvenience, I can still make a lot of difference. It could be, these are all choices, like they say, we are what the choices we make, because of the choices we make. So when it can begin at home, like if we are staying in a what is called gated community, shared apartment complex. So there are a lot of things that we can do, like for example, the waste segregation. Waste segregation is becoming mandatory on almost all the places, but a lot of these places I know, a lot of societies I know have still not started practicing segregation, wet and the segregation of dry and wet waste. So we can, as an individual, I can begin by start segregating and it doesn't require a lot of effort, energy, or money. I just need, earlier I used to have one bin, now I can have two bins, one for the wet waste, one for the dry waste. And a lot of people are not also aware. They feel, well, it's so difficult to segregate, because they feel, once you dump it, you'll have to then again segregate it. It's not the way. You do it right before you throw it into the bin. So you throw the dry waste, waste in one bin, the wet waste in another bin, the organic waste in another bin. So it's so simple and easy. It doesn't require anything. So it can begin from there. It can begin by fixing your water taps, fixing not using the shower anymore. Then instead you can use a bucket. These are simple things, a lot of people have already embraced. And even the schools that I visit for interactions, a lot of kids, I hear them, saying that, this is something that we are trying to do. This is something we have already started doing at our households, or we have been insisting our parents not using plastic bags anymore, carry the biodegradable paper bag, or maybe cloth bag wherever you go for shopping. So, and insisting on taking the public transport instead of wherever possible, if you don't need to drive, if you're going alone, and if there are other modes of travel available. So we can probably do that instead, because We can then save both the fossil fuel and the save the city from pollution, further pollution. And plus, the petrol prices are also skyrocketed now. So obviously, then we can save some pocket money as well. And then choice of foods. Instead of buying it always from a departmental store or big supermarket, we can probably look out in the local market what is available. Because the moment we look out, prefer buying things from the local market, we can probably do multiple things just by buying one. For example, you're buying some vegetable, sabji, from a some local vendor, right? So one, of course, we are supporting his or her livelihood. Second, that person is selling right there, so there's no transportation cost, there's no supply chain involved there. So you can probably buy directly from the source. So thereby, uh, uh, we can also contribute to saving carbon emission and carbon footprint, because the moment we buy it from the supermarket would probably procure it from some hundreds of miles away through a vehicle which is run on fossil fuel. Then they're getting stored in a deep freezer, which is again dependent on electricity, and sold in a store which is air conditioned, right? So unknowingly, we can contribute a lot by cutting down our own carbon footprint. Like carbon footprint is a very important aspect, and something we should all be doing wherever possible, whenever possible. Uh, every activity that we do, from eating to traveling, so we emit carbon, or we contribute to activities which can emit carbon dioxide or other gases, other greenhouse gases, or harmful gases. So by being wiser in our action and in our choices, we can reduce all of that. We can, I went to school. These days, there are good schools, there are private schools, there are Sarkari schools, there are municipality schools, and there are elite schools these days, right? It's a different class altogether, because elite, as in, they look like air conditioned, like, 5-star hotels, like their settings and ambience and all of that. Even the classrooms, they look like, swanky corporate offices, right? I went to a school which is a very well-known school in Noida. In fact, I think it's just started in Noida itself. So they have set up a new campus now. Earlier, they used to run the preparatory primary classes. Now they have got permission to run the higher classes as well. So I went to the campus the other day. I was amazed to see the campus. I would not like to name the center, of course, for obvious reasons. But I was amazed to see the campus. It is completely air condition free. It is the architecture is dependent on natural, uh, you know, questions. So the air can went through the entire building, ventilate, and the go away. There's the lighting everywhere, natural lighting. There's hardly any except the rooms right in the center of the building, of course. This all the other rooms and classrooms are along the sides, along large windows. So you have natural air coming in and lights coming in, well ventilated. And it's a big complex. It's a big multi-storied building, but there I couldn't see air condition anywhere. Even the classrooms also doesn't have any visible wall or anything. I mean, they are separate rooms, but are kind of interconnected so that air can pass through. So this kind of architecture is available, and this is something not rocket science. It's based on our wisdom, based on our in Indian traditional housings, traditional architectural system. Earlier, people used to rely on this kind of designs, environment friendly designs and materials. Now, so the moment we can adopt to this kind of designs or technology, so we will automatically reduce our carbon footprint significantly. Now, like for example, if we go slightly, I'm slightly digressing from the urban area to rural areas. Rural areas, there are a lot of the people still dependent on uh, biomass based, fossil fuel based devices for cooking and heating as in the in the mountain areas where you the colder you require heating, even for boiling of waters and all that. So they're mostly dependent on biomass. Biomass is basically what it's coming from the forest, right? Forest ecosystem. So you're creating, but there are technologies available. There are technologies that providing alternatives to reduce the carbon footprint, increase the efficiency, reduce the smoke. Thereby, you are reducing your pressure on forest ecosystem, right? Your forest resources, trees are getting saved. You can reduce air pollution inside the kitchen. So obviously, the ladies who work there or the other people who are involved in the kitchen, so they are safe from breathing or respiratory diseases. They have more time to contribute to other things, spend more time with the family, right? So these kind of minor changes, it doesn't require a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of finances or investment. So these can have long-term implications. Now coming back to our lifestyle in the cities. So I would like to emphasize that no, these are all about choices, and these choices are available right here. We just need to pick wisely. We don't need to be uh, uh, technically qualified engineer and environmentalist or ecologist to be able to do that. Any person, anyone from any walks of life, not necessarily from science background, and anyone can make these choices that will have a long-term positive impact on our society. Like for example, we are talking on this on so had it been organized in a physical scale, you would have required to hire a hall for this. Again, air conditioned hall, would have required a lot of resources. And then people would have required to travel by burning fossil fuel to reach that destination. So all that is now saved because of these technologies. And so these are minor, and uh, telling you, since we were stuck by the COVID has taught us a lot of things. Of course, it has made us more resilient, but it has also made us to become more resource prudent, right? So yeah, over to you.
So over the years, like, have you seen these little changes creep into the society? Like, how have you seen, like, has the awareness increased in the past 2 years of COVID or on a longer perspective in your?
Hmm. Awareness, of course, certainly it has increased. It has increased from the time environment education was introduced in India. There has been a lot of emphasis and initiatives at various levels by various organizations, including the government, to the 90s. We saw the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court verdict that made the environment education mandatory at the elementary education. So eventually, the environment education became part of the curricula. Earlier, it was not a subject as such. But then it became a curricula at different levels, from primary level all the way to the undergrad level. Then we uh, having courses at the university level now. Earlier, that was also not. Uh, because of all these initiatives, the awareness has certainly had gone up. If you talk to any person, I mean, of course, I've been associated with this field for a long time, environment education, environment as a whole, environment sustainability as a whole. We keep talking to various stakeholders, from students all the way to corporate executive. Uh, we have certainly seen this awareness sensitivity among people about environmental issues. Even if you talk to a person randomly on the street, uh, he or she will have a certain amount of idea regarding air pollution, water issues, so on and so forth, and which is a very positive sign. However, having said so, I would like to highlight and emphasize on one thing. We are still probably lacking in one area, which is we still need a lot to do to convert that awareness into action and behavioral change. Uh, that is taking longer for whatever reason, because we got accustomed to a habit, to a particular lifestyle. The changing that, although I mentioned earlier that it doesn't require a lot of, you don't need to be inconvenient or discomfort to adopt these changes, positive changes, or introduce new things in life. But because of our habit, because of, like I said, we got accustomed to a certain lifestyle. So breaking that and getting into a new shape or a cycle, of course, it takes time. But uh, we can't go on waiting forever, because now time is running out. And we'll have to emphasize more on bringing about positive change by engaging people hands-on through experience and learning, in trying to inculcate positive habits right in the beginning of, in the formative years. Environment education, we keep emphasizing on something called catch them young, because because the early uh, uh, the younger you are, it's easy to adopt new things, and the more age that you become, it's difficult. uh, but going back to your question, yes, visible changes are there, visible in terms of awareness. But like I said, we'll have to probably do more in terms of bringing about changes, the changes that I mentioned, and there are plenty of, these are either, well, a lot of people are already experiencing. And from that lot, we'll have to, because, currently the environmentally conscious and aware people, or people who are actually embracing an environmental lifestyle, they are in a minority now. So what we will have to do is, we'll have to turn it around. We'll have to make that population a majority if we really want these changes to take place. Yeah,
So a very quick question, like you can answer this in a word or two.
right.
Which out of the three generations, Gen Z, millennials, and the elderly, do you think is the most aware at this stage, from your experience?
Uh, you said Gen Z, millennials, and
The
see, it's difficult, but probably millennials are more, they're the ones who are now at the helm of everything, and they're the ones who can probably drive the change. And I see a lot of awareness in this particular generation, of course.
Okay. So we'll proceed with the last question, and it is, what are your thoughts about the VONG movement and like its importance in the society?
Sorry, can you come again? Sorry, I lost it.
What are your thoughts about the VONG movement, Voice of the New Generation?
This is a very, like I mentioned, this is a very unique initiative led by Nitin ji, and I must appreciate the entire team and everyone involved in this initiative. And this is something we need, and this is not just unique. It has a relevance. It will go a long way in what I exactly mentioned, because you're the ones who can bring about change. Because the elderlies have probably lived their life only now. Probably they may not be able to influence everything, so you're the ones who can bring about change, drive this change, and that's the reason we need to bring one, give them the voice, and the second, bring about the voice, and the third one, they give them a platform for the voice, for their voice. So I think Wong is exactly doing that, and I must congratulate for this initiative, and I wish you all the very best, and I wish success for the Wong initiative, and I wish and hope that Wong grows to become the voice of Green India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nathan, sir, would you like to say something as we are ending?
Yeah, I actually had some questions also. I would have liked to come in between also, but I think this might be a good time because I found um, some of Dr. Pranab's comments very interesting. Um, Let me just reorient this a little bit. Okay. Um, so um, uh, so Dr. Pranab, I seen your background and the work that you're doing in this field for so long. It's really inspiring. And like you said, there is a lot more awareness, but that's not translating into action. Um, so our focus at VONG also is actually to mobilize action. Uh, so, so there are two elements. One aspect is about building a deeper understanding uh, and awareness about the issues, and then enabling platforms for the new generation to be able to influence the attitudes of the society. So that's what we are about. And uh, you did mention a lot of things that people can do in their houses individually, and a lot of people have been trying to do that for quite some time. There are shifts that are happening in terms of what technologies are available, what um, modern methods are available, which are more green. Um, at the same time, it takes much longer for every house, for every household to have that sort of understanding. A lot of times, if these become laws or mandates by the government, these things get accelerated. Um, And so my question actually to you was also that what are some of the big things? So we've spoken about in the things that we can try to bring about, um, small changes that we can bring about in our own houses, and cumulatively they become big. But what could be some of the big things that we can uh, look at to be able to reclaim the green spaces in the urban areas? So I'll give you two things that we're already focusing on. We are focused on air pollution as a subject, as a theme, and we are particularly looking at um, maybe moving more and more to EVs, accelerating the transition to EVs, by um, appealing to everybody, by doing some sort of campaigns, bringing that sort of behavioral shift there. And the other thing that we are also focuses on waste management. We've been approached by a large corporate as part of their CSR initiative to uh, try and bring about a behavioral shift in lots of houses, to begin with in Delhi, but then also all over India in waste segregation at homes to begin with. So those are some of the couple of areas that we are trying to address using the voice of the new generation. So what are the other things that you also see around you? The big thing that can be changed by trying to bring about a shift in the attitudes of the people.
Thank you, Nitinji. That's a very pertinent question. I'm going to touch upon these things from multiple aspects. Of course, big thing as in uh, we mentioned about reclaiming areas and probably also enhance our green cover. So I'll begin by that. I've been an advocate of decentralized approach to conservation. Conservations are particularly green and blue spaces because now that things are really fast. In our lifetime alone, we have been fortunately or unfortunately we have seen these changes happening really, really fast, and some of these changes are not certainly happy change or positive change. Uh, so keeping in view of these changes taking place really fast, we'll have to also emphasize on, like, for example, blue and green spaces, blue for the water bodies and green, of course, the forest covers. So we'll have to start protecting them wherever they are. We'll have to start restoring them wherever it's possible. We'll have to probably create more if the area allows, or if there's area available. So we'll have to start focusing on pushing for decentralized approach really, really hard, because we can no longer afford to have centralized approach like earlier. We used to have, of course, we continue to have national parks and sanctuaries, but conservation focus was centered around these spaces. Since if we have big national parks, so we are happy that we have a big national park and species are getting protected. If you have a big water body, we are happy that we have a big ecosystem. The birds are getting shelter, food, and everything. So it's happy about it. But the way overall disruption is happening in terms of green and book spaces, we cannot no longer afford to rely on these national parks and sanctuaries alone, because in terms of the percentage of area cover, which is less than, like for example, we have about 700 national parks and sanctuaries in India, but which is not even 2% of our land mass. So we can no longer to have safer refuge for flora and fauna. So we'll have to conserve them, protect them wherever it's possible, and start focusing on things like restoration of water bodies. And more than restoration, one thing that is missing in our practice at this moment, as far as I want to cite an example of our water bodies. Like if I talk of Gautam Budh Nagar, which is in Uttar Pradesh, it's adjoining Delhi. Yes, as per records, previous, records, there used to be about 1,000 water bodies in this district alone. But now today, the status is very, very serious. We don't have them anymore. The number has shrunk significantly. And there are fights happening, the court cases happening to reclaim some of them. And some of them are probably not in a position to reclaim anymore because they are encroached. There are other structures in those places taken over by structures taken over had taken over these water bodies. So that's that. So what do we do? I mean, if the water body is gone, should we sit idle and do nothing about it? So probably we can save the remaining ones, the ones that are probably, and I can assure India still has a good number of water bodies which are not listed, notified. So we'll have to start focusing from there, fundamental issues. So we'll have to start identifying those issues, get them notified to government intervention so that they can be protected later. Because today, if we don't do that, if we don't take those steps, so tomorrow if they disappear, nobody would know about it, except some locals in the village, right? So these are some of the big things probably we can start focusing on. Now coming to your EV focus thing, which is really, really encouraging. The way EV is being encouraged and it's growing in India, which is a positive sign. However, we'll have to start focusing on two things. One, the alternative source of energy, because currently the EV ecosystem is still dependent on our limited source of energy, which is partly dependent on hydel, partly dependent on thermal, and very minor percentages coming from the renewable solar, wind, and nuclear. So we'll have to start focusing on how this ecosystem will grow in the long run, and we'll have to start creating a capacity, local capacity, to increase the renewable production capacity. So that is one. The second part of EV is that India has already been struggling with waste and e-waste. So EV will contribute further to e-waste generation. So we'll have to, before it's too late, we'll have to start setting up an ecosystem or product or a processing facility so that we do not have to repent later. Because so in case of general waste, India is struggling with one major problem: how to handle with the ones which are already being dumped. Look at our Gazipur, which has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. Either it's getting whether it is because of the fire or the smell or the pollution it's causing to that nala alongside. And also, I remember a couple of years ago, there was an accident also because of the landslide. So So India's primary concern is today what to do with the waste which are already being generated, and we do not have an answer to this yet. Although there are specific sporadic interventions, initiatives, efforts are taking place, including Gazipur, but we'll the way forward should be that we should come up with a practice or a society which is completely zero waste. India has set a goal for itself to become a net zero country by 2070. So similarly, we'll have to also set up a goal to become a zero waste society or a country in some part of time. And otherwise, it will be very difficult in the long run. And I think time is right for EV ecosystem to start looking really, really aggressively as to how to deal with the waste that's going to be generated from the e-waste. And e-waste is again and lesser explored area, because the opportunities and potential that it may have in terms of the recycling is huge. And India's e-waste is currently, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's just about 8% of e-waste is getting recycled and processed. So, which is way too small, and we have potential to do more. I guess I hope I was able to answer your questions. If I missed anything, please feel free to
No,
highlight.
this is extremely useful. But I'm also trying to put this more and more in context here. Um, one of the things which we've realized is very important for these students, and we are not building awareness or talking to a limited number of students. Our scope is actually uh, everyone out there, everyone who's studying in schools at the moment. We are focused on up to 18-year-old school-going students only. We're not working with college-going students. So the first thing is for them to realize that this is not nice to have. This is not something which is academic. This is something which is so important for them. How does it impact you? So air pollution is something that they already see a direct impact of, in their own families. The parents are talking about it. Waste management is something which is slightly more distant, but yes, we are able to bring about, contextualize it, more and more for them. Forest covers, yes, I think that's related to air pollution in many ways. So that's something which one is also able to talk about. Water bodies, restoring water bodies and all. Again, I think as we are able to um, bring about both the understanding of how important they are to you, and also how important is your role in this. So for them to realize that if they don't do it, it's not going to happen, and that's a fact. So there are some things which now can only be driven by this new generation, because everybody else is in status quo mode. Everyone else is like, they're dependent on this unsustainable model they've accepted. Their lives are dependent on how things are already going, and they are not ready to change. So that's something which we do with some help in terms of contextualizing these actionable items in their lives.
Right. No, I think that's a very positive step, because while we were discussing, I mentioned about catching them young. So it's right time and the right approach to reach out to them, talk to them, create awareness, and also provide them opportunities of more learning, hands-on learning, experiential-based learning, to be able to take action at their level individually as
Yes,
well as
and
collectively.
we are not looking at them as catching them young so that they change when 5 years down the line or 8 years down the line. Our focus is for them to build this understanding fast, and really fast, and really recognize the urgency of whatever is happening. So over the next 6 months or so, they should be able to take on an issue and go deeper into it, and really say, where do we demand this action? There are things that only the government can do. There are things which citizens can do. There are things which local governments can do, or law authorities, law enforcement agencies need to do. But to be able to en masse, look at where are the things that are not going right, because they really understand. I mean, it's not that people can say you guys don't know what you're talking about. This is not rocket science, and it's important for you. It's not something that may happen in the future. The impact of that is being felt now.
Yes.
Um, the climate clock is running now,
Yeah.
and if all this is not reversed, what are we living for? There'll be no planet to live on
True.
if
True.
this
True.
continues the way it is. So
True.
that sort of understanding and urgency is what we are trying to instill
Right.
in them, in contextualizing all these issues for them.
Yeah.
And we've also created an environment where they're continuously. So we don't believe in teaching.
Right.
We don't teach. We don't educate. We invite people like you to put things in perspective for them, sensitize them to go and self-learn about these things. And then we've created environments and platforms through which they are continuously competing. There are contests that are running all the time through which they are honing their understanding. And then we are creating platforms for them to reach out to the audiences, reach out to the masses, and bring a shift. By saying yes, this must happen now.
Yeah. It's now or never. You're right.
Absolutely.
There's an urgency, and we'll have to act really fast. And because all the statistics as far as environment is concerned, whether it's climate change, it's all are against us. So we'll have to walk really fast. And you mentioned about climate clock, and it's the timing running really, really fast. So, and we'll have to emphasize a lot on the green cover, because green cover happens to be one of the largest resources repository of carbon. The tree is the only natural element which can capture carbon, and the moment it is cut, it releases all the carbon into the atmosphere. So obviously, the saving green cover should be one of our top priorities, and save the country from further deforestation and forest degradation. And that forest doesn't necessarily mean only in the Himalayas. It forest means every single tree. Like I said, it has to be decentralized. Wherever they are, it should be protected. Not it. We should never uh, ignore the fact that every single tree is important, and it can contribute to our well-being, and it captures carbon. Importantly, it captures carbon. Even a single tree is cut means we are releasing atmosphere directly. Sorry, we are releasing carbon into the atmosphere directly. So every single tree has to be protected wherever they are.
Right. Dr. Pranab, another question that came to my mind was when you were talking about how rapidly the urbanization is happening. The change from migration is going to continue to happen, and from 35%, we're going to reach some 65 to 70%
Right.
urban population. Um, so, what is your recommendation for urban planning? So that there is a conservation of nature as well. Um, and you're able to facilitate the movement that is happening towards urbanization itself. So I mean, how should the urban areas expand? Should they continue to expand horizontally, or is it better to grow vertically? And maybe what are the other considerations one should have um, for this imminent um, rapid growth of urbanization that's likely to happen?
Right. Given what is experienced by all around us, and based on the reports, statistics available, my presumption is in probably in our lifetime, we'll be able to see something like more than half of the world is getting touched by urbanization. And currently we are only talking about the population. Of course, the population is increasing because of urbanization. But we also need to at the same time look at the trend of urbanization, how every nook and corner of the planet is getting touched by the wave of urbanization. And in no time we will have only cities and no rural area or villages left in our planet. So that's a serious concern. So we are not worried about the urbanizations. The positive, of course, positive aspect is huge. The enormous amount of positivity whether it's the healthcare, the better lifestyle, education, everything, every amenities that we need is available in the urban areas as compared to rural side. But that is also creating more dependency on the resources, more demand for natural elements, be it fuel, be it green or blue spaces. So only practice the probably the world can do, and something that I would like to again I would like to cite an example of Singapore. Singapore has been emphasizing a lot on nature-based solutions because now, and this is a very popular concept, and it's getting implemented in many places. Like when there is a problem, can we create a solution which is entirely based on nature? Like for example, restoration of water body is a classic example of nature-based solutions. So instead of taking over these spaces, can we create policies and integrate the importance of biodiversity into our city planning, like the way Singapore is done? Singapore is, they call it city in nature. So can we look at something like this? And I think the time is right for India. And there's an opportunity because, India is already running a major campaign called Smart Cities Program. What we need currently is integrate sustainability into the smartness. It's not difficult. Like you mentioned that, it's not rocket science. We just need to integrate the concern and the aspects to protect and conserve and create more green spaces in the city. City can thrive even when you have nature. Nature does not need to be the water bodies and forest cover do not need to go away for the cities to grow. And you mentioned rightly about vertical versus the horizontal. For a country like India, which is located in the high seismic zone, especially north, northeast, so we probably will have to also look at the factor in this aspect, and cannot only look at the vertical growth. Vertical growth may not be feasible in the long run when the vulnerabilities attached to seismic zone. So we'll have to grow both vertically and horizontally. But when we grow horizontally, we cannot continue to destroy our green and cover. We'll have to factor in them. They can coexist. And the more they coexist, more beneficial would be for the humans, for our survival. They can bring in a lot of positivity. I mentioned about the ecosystem functions and ecosystem services, because most of the services that we receive are not created out of machines. Air quality, we can only purify, we cannot create air, we cannot produce water. We'll have to have those natural elements coinciding and coexisting with us. So yeah, so my vote is for nature-based solutions that has to be, and biodiversity consideration factored into our city planning, and create cities in the model of city in nature, which Singapore has adopted. We do not need to imbibe others everywhere. India has a rich heritage of our own ecological heritage. It has been a country of our nature worshipping. Our solutions are right there in our knowledge and our history. So we can do it. We have all the potential and capability to do it all by ourselves.
Wonderful. So I finally have a slightly more difficult question. India's stance in COP24 about getting carbon neutral by 2070,
right?
Carbon zero by 2070. In a way, they're asking the world to have the permission to pollute the environment as the others have done in the past, so that they can grow faster, they can catch up with the rest of the world, and then they will start making the amends. Your thoughts?
That's a very serious and sensitive aspect, India has been propagating the phasing out, but it's in a systematic order, in a gradual phase out. It's not, and moreover, it requires a lot of resources as well as technology to be able to adopt into something completely new. India's dependency is still less than 30%. I think it's on renewables. I think it's just about 20% or something. Sorry, I do not have the current statistics. Even the richest of the rich developing countries have not been able to go completely green as far as the energy dependency is concerned. And for a country like India, whose demand and consumption is extremely high, in a state like Uttar Pradesh alone has a consumption equivalent to a big European country. So obviously we cannot change or adopt into something overnight. Of course, we would have loved to. That is an ideal situation. Heart of my heart, every environmentalist, all of us sitting here in this audience today, we all want that, if there's a capacity and possibility, we would adopt to green energy right tomorrow, everything 100%. But probably it's not practically feasible policy wise, in terms of resources wise. India is going through a lot of difficulty at this moment, and especially because of COVID-19. So struggle hasn't gone down health wise, economically, and all other issues. So, but it's a bold step for a country of India's size and consumption. It's a bold step. Even 2070 is also not an easy target. Even if you are able to do it phase wise, slowly and gradually, we'll be able to set a benchmark for the entire world. Of course, it all depends on how we contribute, each one of us. The government alone cannot do anything or achieve anything for us. Well, each one of us as a responsible citizen of this country, a responsible, environmentally conscious citizen of this country, we'll have to make our efforts count and do our bit every day possible.
Yeah, this is a difficult one, but Dr. Pranav, I have I have a strong view otherwise. When the climate clock is saying that we may not exist after 2050 or 2060, with the way we are currently going, to set a target to have carbon zero, after that in itself. So how important is it, for one to have that economic progress when we know it's happening at the cost of our, future, as in, this is risking the entire future. Yes, our contribution to that may be insignificant, but symbolically, there is, there's a lot of symbolism also involved in, what you're committing to. And at the same time, in many other fields, we've seen, when India, as a third world country has started to, rise, they are able to skip a few generations and get to the latest generation in terms of, pollution controlling, energy generation systems, or, newer standards which are more energy friendly, climate friendly, and all of that. But here there is a hesitancy to say that we don't want to compromise on our growth. So that's the whole question. I think the reason we are as the world we are where we are is because of rampant growth. I'm saying that we look at the climate later. I mean, isn't that what we are also saying here?
Not really, because I personally also feel that while growth is important, but it may not be bigger than the climate crisis that we are facing. But for a country, India's context is very complex. The number of people who are dependent for their livelihood, for activities which are.
I hear you, sir. I hear you.
Yes,
I mean, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
but just that I think this is a difficult one.
Yeah,
to sort of respond.
It's a very, very complicated issue. Like I was saying, because a lot of our activities are still not environment friendly. A lot of So if we go down in the industry ecosystem, in manufacturing industry, for example, all the automobile industries, all the ancillary products that comes in to make a complete car, that comes from small and micro enterprises, and where many of the processes that are being followed still not eco-friendly. They are energy high energy consumers, as well as polluting in nature. But the livelihood attached to those industries are huge. So even if we want, we cannot stop them today and turn into something which is not available immediately, or at a cost affordable to us, or maybe to that small entrepreneur.
No,
And so
absolutely,
we
sir. But the point is, how convinced are we about the imminence of the climate impact? As climatologists, as people who understand it, if we are convinced about it, I mean, what we experienced during COVID time,
right.
we preferred lives over livelihood. Um,
True, true, true,
and the whole, I mean, we could see the impact that it had on the environment. Um, and the mandate said you cannot do it because lives are important. Even
true,
100 lives are important, so you cannot do
true,
it. Yeah,
true.
over a period of time, we started to look at things differently, but we did take those calls. And there are some. It's a question of taking a hard stand on some of these things and saying these things are not okay, and then we are going to accelerate some of this because we are convinced that it could happen, even though our contribution to this is lesser, but you know it is in the same direction.
Yeah.
So why, somewhere it might also be about the tipping point. I mean, to say that we are here, and how will it matter if we are here? But the tipping point might be just here. So why do we want to continue to add to it?
Yeah, it's a question of
Yeah, no,
survivability.
I know this
Yes,
is a moot question, but
yeah, survivability versus our environment. And so so long we have the people and their needs in front of us, we will have to probably compromise. And even if we don't want, as an environmentalist and passionate about our bringing about solutions, sustainable solutions, I may not be comfortable. But then what choice do we have? Because lives are dependent on industries which are not environment friendly or maybe polluting. So now, I just give you a small example. There are n number of millions of industries which are polluting at this moment, which are uh, drawing water directly from the groundwater sources, which is limited, and they are throwing polluted water into the river system, which is again polluting. So
yes.
but
So
only
one of the alternatives that I can think of is to tax the developed nations. As in, don't get a lot of funds from them, not as loan, but as grants. To be able to bring about large scale changes here. To be able to sustain economically and bring about those kind of changes to accelerate some of this. Um,
it is
demand that.
it is a possibility. And one more possibility that we have, and which is emerging really, really fast, is the carbon market. The carbon market, the more carbon offset projects are being undertaken. So we are creating an opportunity to store carbon or control emission of carbon. So that is an opportunity, and more initiatives are being taken. Like, for example, I would like to I mention about the cooking and heating devices, alternative cooking and heating devices. Like, for example, cook stove, smokeless cook stove, which is a very popular device across various parts of the world now. People, of course, we have LPG connections available to the remotest corner available, but still it's not always available or affordable. So people still prefer to cook because of various reasons, including traditional and cultural issues, because they are not to get the kind of taste they used to when it is cooked with in a proper biomass based cook stove. Uh, our dependency continues. But if we are able to bring in alternatives at a large scale, so millions of tons of carbons can be stored. Sorry, can be can be saved, or emissions can be prevented. So alternative is the key. We'll have to, at every level of our lifestyle, every level of our functions, right from our consumption all the way to disposal and processing. Sorry, in between I missed production, consumption, production, processing, and disposal. Will have to include elements of sustainability at every level. Serious intervention. It cannot be a symbolic intervention. It cannot be something on paper or like a greenwash kind of an activity. We'll have to imbibe those practices at every level, and government probably will have to make it more incentivized. Of course, there are incentives available for EVs and solars and all that, but even for lifestyle change also, like for example, if you are buying an RO, for example, RO, which is because RO has a it rejects water, and liters and liters of water are getting rejected because it's not, it is after the purification process, there are certain amount of water which is no longer safe for consumption, so it is thrown away. So can we look at alternative, like, suppose some RO is able to innovate
community
something?
community based water treatment plants, which has much lesser rejection, which is bio, which is organic and things like that.
Absolutely. And like for example, our air conditioner also, if it comes up with something which is innovative in nature, because there's also some amount of rejection of water happening at the air conditioners also. So incentive has to be introduced at every level, both for technological innovations and also for adaptation, and at the end user level. Like suppose, if I want to buy something, and if I'm buying an eco-friendly product, it should be more cost effective than the one which is polluting.
Absolutely.
It is other way around currently. If I want to eat healthy
That's
products,
also, yeah, but that's also because of the economies of mass. So I think until such time they reach certain consumption pattern, they need to be subsidized,
right,
so that they have their own um,
yeah,
trajectory.
profitability, yes.
Yes,
And similarly, if I want to buy healthy products, buy natural food products like organic, they're expensive. It has to be other way around, because we are talking about food for all campaign. If and food for all should not be or cannot be just any other food. It should be healthy food, which is a food which is grown without chemicals. So, and it has to be made available at an affordable cost for everyone to consume. It is completely unfair. Just because I have money, I can procure good quality food which is completely chemical free, and the other person who's not able to afford it, and he or she is consuming food which are grown with chemicals. This is completely unfair. So we'll have to draw that line somewhere. You'll have to, and I just gave you an example from the agriculture sector, but it is applicable everywhere. Like your 5-star rated energy efficient refrigerator, it is more expensive than the one which is 1-star rated. It is unfair. A
right,
person, a person who is not able to afford it, but he also might be willing to contribute to environment because he or she
right.
is aware about it. But just because he or she doesn't have the money, cannot buy it, it is unfair. So now, in fact, we'll have to have some kind of system where everything is at par and everything is not environment friendly and non-polluting.
That will also happen, sir. I see that happening once this new generation, because once you understand the basics of what is required, then you want to see that everywhere. So right now the solution may be piecemeal, but that's when these people who really understand what's required, they will not allow anything which they see as poisonous or dangerous, those kind of practices to continue.
True, that's absolutely.
Thank you so very much for my questions. I know some of them were a little tricky, but I really enjoyed interacting with you.
Absolutely, same here, sir. Honor is all mine, and I really appreciate your questions, because, and it is very important that we start asking questions and critical and powerful questions, because only powerful questions can lead to powerful answers and solutions. Because if we continue to uh, you know and hide behind the the comfort of our houses, or not or avoiding these kind of questions, we will never be able to find solutions for all that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for
Yes.
having me here.
Priyank, sorry, I normally don't come in between, but this topic was very close to my heart, so I, was the first
No,
one to ask
glad
questions.
I'm glad that you came in, and I also got an opportunity to share my views with you and all our audience here.
Exactly. So it's all about conversations in the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anybody else wants to ask any question? I know we have far exceeded the time, more than half an hour. Um, but if there's any pressing question anybody has. Go ahead, Priyank.
Okay, people, with that, we have come to the end of this event, and I would like to greet Mr. Pradeep and Nitin sir. Thank you for everyone for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.